Come on, bitch, let's go. Come on, get ready, bitches. You haven't seen nothing yet. Come on.
Valentino, Versace, Lamborghini, Bugatti. I got money to burn. I'm single and I'm naughty.
Come on.
Tiffany's, Cartier, Gucci on Marty.
Come on.
Break out your black card, boys. It's time to party.
Welcome back to Dishing Drama Dana. And today I'm going to be doing the podcast by myself intentionally because I want to talk to you guys about some current Hollywood secrets that are being discussed. And in case you're not aware of them, I think most of the topics will interest you. I wanted to spend the initial part of the podcast talking about these things. And then I wanted to take you into the secrets of Bibi Hilton because we are covering the Hiltons in the Patreon in multiple different ways. We've covered Paris Hilton's memoir. We've covered House of Hilton extensively. We've done comparisons of the two books together. We just got through an interview with Mark Ebner, who wrote 6 Degrees of Paris Hilton, which covered Paris's life in, the late 90s, early to mid 2000s. And I thought it very appropriate to have Bibi Hilton enter the chat. Now, Bibi is in her early 90s, and she was married to Eric Hilton. That is Rick Hilton's uncle. She married Eric Hilton in the 80s, right around the time that Kathy Hilton actually married Rick. But Bibi was 51 when she married Eric. And so she's like a later generation Hilton. Now, Bibi is in her own right a bit of an icon. I'm hoping to speak to her. Even though she's 91, she still has many stories to share. And I'm hoping to be able to arrange that because she is an icon. And in fact, maybe the original influencer, not Paris. Although Paris took that accolade. So I'm sending her light and love. I'm not going to get into why, but sending Bibi Hilton my love and my light and hoping that we're able to arrange a conversation really soon. All right, so let's get into it. We are going to be talking about the secrets of Hollywood right now. Gossip that isn't supposed to be out there yet, bubbling under the surface about some pretty big celebrities, and a new predator emerges. Yeah, allegations of a new Hollywood predator. So let's get started. I first want to talk about the TikTok that was released on the internet and it was erased, but I don't think it was erased because it wasn't true. I think it was more erased because it didn't go with TikTok's stringent guidelines for what they'll allow you to post. So let's go ahead and let me play you the sound of this TikTok video and what's alleged in it about Nicholas Braun. Yes, the Nicholas Braun.
They're a little thing they want to hold on to, and I guess that's me.
Okay, so this is me when I was 16. This is baby girl in question. Another reference pic. But basically, when I was 16 years old, this man tried to invited me back to his hotel room. I told him I was in high school. He didn't care. He gave me his number and he invited me back to his hotel room. I declined because I didn't want to get assaulted. But I later found out that same day someone else who I went to high school with who was also underage. So I'm not really buying this baby girl thing, just thought I'd like to.
Nicholas is a very popular character. He's known for playing Greg Hirsch on the HBO series Succession. He's like a funny, awkward character. He's been on the show from 2018 all the way till now. He's been nominated for 2 Primetime Emmy Awards for Outstanding Supporting Actor in a Drama Series in 2020 and 22. He started as a child actor. He played Zack Attack in Sky High, which was a kid movie in 2005. And he's also had roles in the Disney Channel original movie Minutemen in 2008. And he was also in the movie Princess Protection Program, which was a Disney Channel original movie. It starred Demi Lovato and Selena Gomez. Okay. So Nicholas Braun, by the way, is 34 years old, about, give or take, right? Because they're never totally accurate online. But let's just say he's around 34 as of 2023. He's been in the business since he was really, really young, like maybe 13 years old. Craig Braun is his dad, actually, and his father was kind of a party animal. It was documented that he was addicted to coke, and he then was indicted for tax evasion in 1974. He was partying with a lot of really famous rock stars and artists during this period of time. Then he cleans up his act and really becomes like a prolific marketing agent and designer for most record albums, even music videos at a later point in his career for very, very famous bands. Rolling Stones, like best album covers, Led Zeppelin 3, I mean, really, really solid. The Beatles, Day Tripper. So he's really talented guy. He ends up going out, by the way, with Diane von Furstenberg. And he did really well for himself for a while until his drug addictions spiraled. And then he got clean and he then was successful. But I don't know if it was at the height of his career that he once had, where he was, you know, he had this like luxury apartment in Manhattan and all this stuff. He has 3 wives in his life that are major relationships. Madeline Braun from 1961 to 1966, Marie Helene Ramil from 1981 to 1983, and Elizabeth Lyle from 1986 to 1993. Elizabeth Lyle is Nicholas Braun's mom. She is very close to him, and he's even taken her to, you know, basketball games and things like that. Now, here's the issue. He is so loved, and he does have a huge fan following from his show Succession. And so, like all famous television stars that are relatable and cute, you know, the people, the fans start to wonder, hey, who's he dating? What's his type, you know? And I suppose young people imagine, like, could I bump into him and date him and stuff like that? You know how it goes. So anyway, that brings me to the fan discussion regarding his type. So the question became like, what girls is Nicholas Braun into? Well, there was gossip that he was into BDSM, but I mean, it was really, really just gossip. And then there was rumors that he had a serious girlfriend finally. Although he said he never was able to commit with anyone in his whole life. He was linked loosely to Dakota Fanning. He told the New York Times that he'd never had a long-term relationship, but he believed one day he would when the time was right. He's never gone public with any girlfriend, but oddly, he owns a club in New York. It's a huge hotspot. It's called Ray's, and it's on Christie Street. It's on the Lower East Side. Gigi Hadid has been seen there, Channing Tatum, Zoe Kravitz, Shawn Mendes, A$AP Rocky. But the young 20-year-olds love this place, and they keep looking for him because he's been actually called by the New York Post as the hottest bachelor in New York right now because of his relationship as an owner into this hotspot where young women flock to meet people. Crowd gossip people have sent numerous posts of him partying all around New York City. In fact, in one such crowd gossip post, it was disclosed that he was on a date with 2 brunettes and they were making out with one another. He's also, you know, dated on Instagram, slipped into a few women's DMs. All the women were really, really happy because he's so popular and loved by his fan base. Here's a really fun Instagram video that he did, probably playing up on some of the crowd gossip humor that's been released about him, never being with just one person and being all over New York on dates with like hot women. Let me play it for you.
Hey guys, I just wanted to make this video and address something that's been going on in my comments a little bit and in my messages. There's been a bunch of people saying they want me to hit them with my car, like in a sexy way, or like stomp on their neck with my Crocs, or slap them in the face, these kind of like violent, sexy type things. But the car thing is really concerning, and I just wanted to say, I'm down. Like, let's figure it out, because I want to help. So, for me, the only thing is just like I don't want the car to get damaged that much, and I don't want a ton of blood on the car, things like that. Like, if we can find a way to do it where you can just pop off the hood, like really lightly, and fly through the air and get all the stuff you need out of it, and then land not too badly, and I'm just thinking about hospital bills and all that stuff, and I just don't want to get into insurance problems and everything. But whatever you need, I'm here to help, and it could be fun.
Okay, so he's kidding, I hope. Now that you got some insight on Nicholas Braun and his family and his energy a little bit, his vibe, what he's up to, let's go ahead and revert back now to that TikTok I just played you in the beginning of the podcast. I want to give you some background on what she was referring to. What she's referring to, by the way, is that the internet is so in love with Nicholas Braun, they've called him their baby girl, and Nicholas, of course, made fun of it like he does. I'm like, I don't know how I feel about being the internet's baby girl. And then he's like, okay, I'm okay with being a baby girl, but I just want everybody to know that I'm a boy, and I'm, basically I'm into girls and not the other way around. And he goes on, and that's his thing. But that's what triggered this TikTok video from this girl. Now, he's got such a huge fan base. I have no doubt that they will not want to even take a glimpse of this situation, but it's real, and it is being alleged. Now, in the video, she shows pictures of her with Nicholas Braun. In one picture, she's on his shoulders, dancing around with him to try to validate that the story was true that she was telling in her TikTok video. But she's not the only one. 3 other women came out with similar claims, and actually they made a Reddit and posted the women's testimony on their social media on the Reddit to make sure that people saw it all together. And so there was a girl named Blythe, and she said, "This man tried to kiss my friend when she was 12 and he was in his 20s. He is so creepy, and it's actually a lot worse than the 2 16-year-olds, which is still so bad. He's a full-on pedophile." Another blind came out that said, "Nick used to DM 17 to 18-year-old fans in 2020 a lot. There have been rumors about him sleeping with barely legal girls forever. We tried to talk about it, but his fans sent us death threats. The worst shit. We had a reason to dislike him. Fuck him and fuck his fan base." And then another Queen Bee 433. "He routinely seeks out young women at his bar and follows very young IG models wearing next to nothing. It's super weird given his wholesome vibe, and honestly feels generally skeevy given how he now has a reputation for sliding into DMs and sleeping around. At 35, I just think it's weird for him to be seeking late teens and early 20s out." So Nicholas made a song that he asked all of his fans to help write, which was like a comedy song called Antibodies. And it was a huge hit, went viral or whatever. And there was a girl in his music video named Camilla Engstrom, and he did date her. Although as soon as COVID ended, that was the end of the romance. Now, he had done an article with Esquire magazine in 2020, and he was quoted as saying, "I was just feeling like, God, it'd be great to go on a date with somebody and just have a little human contact. And I was talking to a girl, and we were not sure if we should. A woman slid into my DMs, and then he said, I know that sounds kind of crazy, but it's like you can learn a lot about a person. We met up, and I didn't even see her face until right at the end of the day. We were like, hey, by the way, here's what I look like." Okay, doesn't sound too Rico Suave to me. But anyway, the New York Times quoted him as saying, "I'm fascinated by romance, but it's because I haven't ever been in a really long-term relationship ever. I do yearn for it, and yet I'm capable of it. I go toward it, and then I hit a wall where I'm like, I can't go farther into this. I've got to exit. I do believe it'll happen at the right time with the right person. Until then, it's fun to meet people and see what works." Sounds to me like he's a playa. Now, his partner in this bar is Justin Theroux, and Justin Theroux has been known to be, fascinated with 20-year-old women, much like the Leo DiCaprio models and all of that. Obviously, he was married to Jennifer Aniston for a really long time. But yeah, he's known for this too. There's rumors around him being kind of a player with young girls. Let me read you his Reddit thread that has been dedicated to him, Justin Theroux. I think he's so good looking. It's no wonder this guy's a player. The other guy, not so much. Nicholas, kind of a weird one. But anyway, it says, "Here we go. In February 2018, Jennifer Aniston and Justin Theroux announced their 6-year relationship ended in late 2017. Justin Theroux is single for the first time in 20 years, and he's ready to prowl. It's Justin's best friend, who's this famous nightclub restaurateur named Carlos Chiarte. He's been around forever. He's done Paris Hilton's 30th birthday party. He's a man about town, this guy. Sorry, that's not in the article. That was me just saying that. Okay. Anyway, he owns a restaurant called The Smile. A young lady, we'll call her B, began working there when she was 18 years old. Here she is smiling at her new job, not knowing yet she'd be hit on by her boss's BFF. And there's this really cute brunette girl standing in front of the restaurant's door, The Smile. The Smile is a restaurant that Jen plus Justin went to often in 2016, which is pretty awkward looking back. Social media sleuthing and paparazzi shows that between 2018 and February of 2021, B and Justin had a very close personal relationship. One source says they lived together during the pandemic, which makes sense because there are many pictures of her in his apartment in 2020, and someone had to take all those pictures of Kuma and JT, Justin Theroux, eating dinner. I won't post the 20 plus photos that show them at his home and around New York City because she is now 27 years old and has never spoken about him. But it's clear Justin Theroux met a teenage girl working at his best friend's restaurant when he was married in his mid-40s and had a 2-year plus relationship with her starting when she was 22 or 23. Justin continues to like almost all of her Insta posts to this day. And there have been many blind items reported on this from 2021. So then, she refers to blind gossip saying look, the story that she knows in detail is backed up by these blinds that have been submitted to different crowd gossip sites. Then this blind is presented. What celeb secrets can you spill? And it says, actor and actress are hooking up, met on the set of this recently filmed movie that I posted a lot about. And then another hint is dropped. Actor equals B-list TV and movie actor who once married to a very popular beloved actress. People guessed Kiernan Shipka on the set of the HBO show that she was shooting with Justin Theroux, and they were filming in the summer of 2021 when The Blind came out, the show being called White House Plumbers. A commenter said they know for a fact it's an actress from his new Apple TV show because they've been hanging out a lot lately. A lot being strained. This rumor is mentioned a few times here and there, but no heat around it. It pops up again a couple of weeks ago in June of 2022, and from what we've found on social media, it's true. Justin Theroux, who will be 51 in a few weeks, is dating a 20-year-old actress who plays his daughter on the Apple TV show The Mosquito Coast, which he produces and stars in based off the book by his uncle Paul Theroux. They started production in November of 2019 when she was only 17 years old. She's been isolated on location with him in Mexico for 6+ months each of the 2 seasons. She moved from her parents' home in LA to New York City, where Justin lives, when she was 18 or 19. We have receipts that show that Justin takes her around Mexico, New York, upstate New York, and LA. The first offset photo of JT and Logan was posted by each on February 15, 2020. And the Reddit goes on to complain that this is very convenient because it's 2 days after she turns 18. And so he literally is waiting until she's 18 to post something with her. So he's serious about her at this point. Anyway, 5 days later, on February 20th, 2020, Logan's mom posts a picture thanking Justin Theroux for playing photographer. Mom is 5 years younger than Justin. Ew. Okay, sorry guys. That's kind of gross. Befriending the parents is textbook rhymes with zooming behavior. After these photos, they are very discreet. Justin, of course, has been at the tippy top of the gossip machine and knows to be careful. Later in February of 2020, Justin Theroux and Logan post identical pictures on the beach in Mexico at the same time. Between February and December 2020, we have a lack of receipts because our main sleuth wasn't sleuthing. But in December of 2020, Justin Theroux posts a video roundup of the season 1 shoot. For those not Insta savvy, you can select a cover photo for your video by going through each frame. It's a pain in the ass to get the exact frame you want, especially in the 1 minute and 35-second video. Justin was very intentional about choosing Logan. Anyway, this post goes on to post numerous receipts, all describing Justin with this very young girl all over the place, traveling with her to show that she was under 18 when he started seeing her. All right. So that's it. But I guess I'm bringing it up because this is Nicholas's partner, okay? And let's just say this isn't true. It's just a little smoke around a kindle. You know what I'm saying? There's a kindling of a fire and there's some smoke around it. So you'll have to decide, is this all nonsense and Nicholas is the greatest guy ever? Or does all this talk, all this information lead you to believe that there might be some truth to these allegations that are being made about these Hollywood guys, kind of looking for young girls and maybe using this bar as a way to do it. Big shocker. It's not like we haven't heard this before, but maybe about these people, it's a bit of a shocker. I think that's why I'm really covering it. And it is a Hollywood secret that is current right now. Now, there's another friend in this whole group that Justin's supposed to be close with, and his name is Cary Fukunaga. And Cary Fukunaga is a famous filmmaker. Okay, he's known for James Bond, No Time to Die, and other stuff. Anyway, he has had a lot of allegations made against him recently. In October of 2021, Raiden Greer accused Fukunaga of pressuring her into doing a topless scene for True Detective that was not included in her contract. In April and May of 2022, 3 women accused Fukunaga of various forms of sexual harassment. And actress and skateboarder Rochelle Vinberg posted videos to Instagram accusing Fukunaga of grooming her and many other young actresses, citing in particular her experience filming his A Perfect Day Samsung commercial in 2016 when she was 18. She said that she had been in therapy for a year and diagnosed with PTSD as a result of his behavior on that set. On May 5th, 2022, twins Hannah and Kellen Loesch, who worked on Maniac, another project he did, accused Fukunaga of sexual harassment and grooming. Okay, and so supposedly he goes and hangs out with Justin and he brings girls over using their starness or whatever and smokes pot with them, gets them high and sets it up, I guess. So I leave it with you. I'm certainly not trying to destroy anyone's dream of their favorite actor, but as you know, whenever you look closely at something, you're going to see probably things you didn't want to see. And at least if you end up going to Ray's, and especially the secret club downstairs in the basement, you will, not be taken advantage of, and you'll go in with your eyes wide open as to what could happen if you get a little too starstruck. All right, my next current Hollywood secret is my favorite. The real reason that Taylor Armstrong and Joe Alwyn broke up. I love this one. Okay, so supposedly what was happening was Joe Alwyn was, always kind of the one not so committed in the relationship with Taylor Swift. So he loved her, he enjoyed being with her, but he wasn't totally committed to Taylor Swift in the way that she was committed to him. Now, I said in my bonus audio that I didn't have to be in the know with Taylor Swift to know that she probably at her age wanted to escalate the commitment to maybe getting engaged or getting married because she's getting older now. And if she wants to have kids, she has to be if she wants kids in a traditional way, which I think Taylor probably does, she has to be in somewhat of a serious relationship for like a year or two before she can do that. And she probably wants to be pregnant by the time she's 37 or 38 years old. I mean, like most of us, right? Because it's getting late then. I mean, I was pregnant when I was 37 for the first time. I lost my baby, which a lot of women do, their first pregnancy. My child had spina bifida severely, and it terminated. And then I was pregnant again, and then I had my John, right? But I'm like 50, okay, and John's only 13, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm so freaking old feeling. Like I kind of want to be retired right now with no worries, not this. So, I mean, I think, 35 is really the sweet spot here. 34 maybe. So I'm sure Taylor's feeling the pressure. That's all I'm saying. Well, anyway, it turns out I was pretty right in that, because what I guess the big secret is that Joe Alwyn had said to Taylor that he wanted to take a break. Now, he had taken breaks from Taylor before. So Taylor Swift was used to this kind of scenario with him where he'd take a minute. And I think that a lot of the people in gossip land believe that, she just thought this was another break and it would work itself out. She would go on tour and they would, kind of reconvene. She probably expected him to come back and maybe with like a stronger feeling for her, maybe even get that escalation she was looking for. But that is not what Joe did. He did something that he'd never done before, and allegedly he leaked to the press and to the crowd gossip websites through people close to him that they were broken up so that it would get out. Now, Taylor was really upset because she never wanted this to come out before her big tour that she was doing. And so him leaking this information out there was like horrible for her. And so on March 31st, she drops, she makes a set change and she puts the one in as the song, which is a song about breaking up. And so we know probably by March 31st that this had all happened. And a lot of people believe that the breakup really occurred way back in February. That's when it started. And then very quickly he leaked it, and then she made the change in the song, and then the breakup came out on April 8th. So not great timing for her. So I think the betrayal that no one is aware of is that there's a lot of indicators that Joe Alwyn was the one who actually leaked the breakup news to kind of solidify it, I guess, because he didn't really want to come back this time. And so that is a secret, a Hollywood secret that's going around in current events. Believe it or not.
Believe it or not.
So now the next big secret is, who is Taylor Swift dating? Because allegedly she's dating someone now and he's older. You know, he's like 40 or something, 45 years old. I believe it because like I said, I think her end game here is she wants to do the adult relationship now. She's ready. She's looking for someone established. She's looking to someone who wants to settle down. She doesn't need to make money ever in her life again. She doesn't have to marry a celebrity. She doesn't have to marry an actor. She can marry a regular person who is just stable and good. And, you know, she is into down to earth things. Yes, you know, she did have lots of friends that were models and famous girls, and she hung out with that crew. But I do think, you know, she has deep down inside of her a down-to-earth kind of geeky nature that she wouldn't mind just being with like an attractive regular guy, you know, if he could handle her job. I mean, remember, Taylor Swift is from super intelligent financial advisors, her mom and dad. And they're also from Pennsylvania, Reading, Pennsylvania. She just bought a house in a suburb of Boston. I mean, she's definitely salt of the earth type person. Have you ever seen her special that she did, her docuseries? I think it's on Netflix. She's just hanging out in her like sweats by the fire, doing her music. Like, I think that is really who Taylor is. When my daughter met her, her surprise was that although she's so beautiful in person, she was kind of awkward and geeky in her way. She didn't have like the cool factor or whatever. So, you know, like the Paris Hilton, everything you do is like comes off as cool somehow. Like, she didn't have that. So, I mean, I think, yeah, this is a new chapter for Taylor we're going to see here. So anyway, there you go. Okay, so two quick ones I'm going to do without doing the deep dive here. One is that Zayn Malik is maybe hooking up with Selena Gomez, and that's a big maybe. Selena allegedly hooked up with Zayn a long time ago, and she, as Enty has pointed out in several of his blinds, he believes she's already hooked up with 3 other bandmates in One Direction. And so, you know, if that's true, and she also had a hookup pass with Zayn Malik, something keeps drawing her to the energy of, you know, that group of people, that clique. Zayn was allegedly fired because of his drug and alcohol abuse. And of course, that came up again when he had the altercation with Gigi Hadid and her mom, Yolanda. So we got to hope that this guy got his act together in the last year after he nuked his whole family, right? I mean, you got to imagine the guy smartened up a little bit. I don't think that Selena Gomez or Malik are sober. I don't. But maybe they can keep it in check. I don't know. I mean, I don't know. But needless to say, there were pictures of them that were taken in Soho in New York. They were walking down in Soho, I guess, holding hands and kissing. And they were on a date of some sort. So, yeah. Well, they're definitely hooking up again. But, you know, the question is for how long. Sometimes you have people that you just connect with and you get drunk with and you enjoy partying with, but you know it can't go anywhere. So this could be one of those. But she definitely crushes on him, Selena, for sure. All right, one more, a Hollywood current secret. I'm having too much fun. How about you guys? Did you see Till Death Do Us Part, Courtney and Travis on Hulu? Okay, so some of you guys watched it and loved it. So I watched it to see it because it's uniquely done. It's not done in a traditional reality show formula. It's done much more artistically. And the weddings are pretty spectacular, as you would imagine. It is actually very entertaining and very well done and unusually done, which I really appreciated. Travis and Courtney come off as really authentic in it, which is unusual for the Kardashians. It is weird to me that Courtney is ending up doing a big reality TV show special when she supposedly wanted to be so private. That was a little odd to me. I kind of feel like she's kind of pushing herself out there. Maybe she's doing it for her kids to help them. Maybe they're showing an interest in, you know, pursuing entertainment on their own. So she's sort of keeping the the momentum of fame going as she was kind of backing away from the flame, not as interested in being famous. She might be like getting an interest in it for their sake. But needless to say, this came out. Now, one of the things that is in it, of course, is the Kardashians' preacher. And everybody thinks as he's marrying them, Chad Veach is his name. His wife, Julia Veach, is also in the docuseries. He's just so relatable and wonderful, and he's dressed in a red cape like Superman, the Dolce Gabbana. Anyway, he's an evangelical pastor, okay? And he's founded a church now called Zoe Church, but he used to orate at the Hillsong Church. And he would also speak at their Hillsong conferences you could pay to, because it was kind of like, got a bit of the Scientology aspect where like celebrities were treated different a little bit. They'd have like special privileges with the church, and you could like, they would upsell things. Hillsong is most famous for baptizing Justin Bieber. He was devout. He promoted them to no end. The main pastor of the Hillsong Church, not the global pastor, but like, I don't know what you'd call him, the New York or the LA pastor's name was Carl Lentz. And Carl became very famous because he would preach, the Bible, and obviously you're not supposed to cheat on your wife in the Bible, but he ends up having an affair on his wife, which obviously wasn't a good look for him. And then he also ends up having assault charges brought against him by the nanny for assault over many years. She claimed that he would groom her, and to what level the sexual assault happened, but that was what happened. And it happened over and over again. So not a great pastor, right? That's all I'm saying. So anyway, this guy, Chad Veach, is a little bit guilty by association with the Hillsong Church. There were other controversies with the Hillsong Church, but for now we'll leave it there. And there are a lot of people that are alleging that, again, this pastor, although very cool, has he's brought over a bunch of celebrities into his church. He upsells a bunch of things, for you to buy to better yourself. And that maybe he doesn't have the best interest of his followers at heart. Let me just give you a very unjuicy example, okay? The reviews on the church, some of them say this. Just hear this out. I went to the service for the first time at Zoe. The worship was great, but the message was broadcast on video. The video had clearly been shot that morning, so the pastor was obviously in town. As a pastor, you have one main job: preach to your congregation. If you can't do that, then reduce the number of services or number of campuses so you can. If I wanted to watch a video, I could just watch it later on your website. I don't need to drive to Hollywood to do it. But listen to this part. Secondly, of this hour-plus service, almost 25 minutes was propaganda about giving money to the church. The pastor boasted that his father gave him $20,000 towards building his new house in LA, and that the giver benefited more. Prosperity gospel is great, but that shouldn't be the focus of your service before you even share your message. Listen to this one. If you want designer labels boasting about celebrities and cliques, then this is your place. There's always 30 minutes of worship and hype about giving, and then maybe a 25-minute message. Not worth fighting traffic and parking for this. And hey, if you're Halle Baldwin or Justin Bieber, Chad will respond on IG, but he'll never respond to the ones like us that support and serve. He came from Tacoma, Washington, like myself, but took on that shiny LA exterior way too fast.
Can I get an amen? Can I get an amen?
People also complained that as they were entering Zoe's church, all they saw was merchandise everywhere. And now we see this, Chad Veach being one of the stars of this Hulu series. right? With Kourtney Kardashian. He broke himself away from the church, she says, so he could do the service, and they appreciated it so much. Give me a break. Now, I didn't even get into Chad Veach's mentor, who was Brian Houston. He was the global leader of the Hillsong Church, another, big guy up there. And he was arrested, okay? He was arrested in Australia. He was criminally charged in Australia because he was aware of sexual abuse of a child by his father and never did anything in the 1990s. He also was found to have breached his moral code in the church for behavior with 2 women. Okay, so he also did incorrect things with women at his church. What were those things? He sent a text message that was inappropriate to a staff member, so inappropriate that she quit. And then another woman, he went into her hotel room during a Hillsong conference and spent some time with her there, but they don't say what he did there with the woman, but obviously something inappropriate when they did an investigation. All right, so this is the cherry on top. So Zoe's church, Chad Veach and his wife Julia, just bought a $9 million old 98-year-old Buddhist temple in Highland Park. And they're going to be redoing that whole building. But I don't know, man, just wow, $9 million. I have a feeling his celebrities are giving him money left and right, or finding ways for him to get paid through their projects like the Kardashians did. Wonder if he ever worked at their church, the California Community Church. That's the Kardashian church. By the way, that church is still functioning, and Brad Johnson is still the pastor of that church. And Brad had a controversial past, and then Kris Kardashian forgave him or whatever she did in all of her glory and brought him into her church. But yeah, they have a church still. I don't know. I guess they must go back and forth between the churches, or maybe the churches help each other, Zoe's church and this church. There's lots of scandalous things about how these churches operate. But anyway, I will leave it there for today. Those are my favorite current event Hollywood secrets. Before I end it, though, there is an amazing Kardashian church confessional video in the Patreon. If you haven't watched it, please do. You'll love it. Now let's get dirty on the Hilton, shall we? So Bibi's book, I'm just a guest here, the inspiring memoir of a Hilton wife, Bibi Hilton, begins with a really juicy introduction. And she's talking about Conrad Hilton and how his wife, when he dies, although he's worth $500 million in his estate, she only gets one lump sum of $1 million and $50,000 a year for the rest of her life. Now, in 1979, when Conrad died, that would be the equivalent in today's world of $207,876 per year. So not too shabby. But as inflation goes up and up and up, which, by the way, it's out of control now, we're all living 50% worse off than we did 20 years ago. I mean, it's really, really bad. It's a huge problem. This money becomes less and less valuable over time, to the point where it's barely worth anything by the time she's an old lady and really needs it. And if you're curious, the buying power of $1 million in 1979 would have been $4,157,000. So it wasn't like he left her in the dirt. I love how people describe it like it's today's value. It wasn't. It was much higher, obviously, then. So anyway, a lot of people criticize Conrad for that payout to his wife because they thought he was being cheap because he donated most of to charity, as we know. Also, his wife was not allowed to take any of the possessions or furniture, anything in casa and cantata, which was very upsetting for her because she had some of the furniture represented memories for her with Conrad, but he refused to give her those things. So she never even got that. And they weren't divorced. Can you imagine? Your husband dies and they're like, sorry, you've got to leave all your stuff and go. I mean, it's kind of cold. Anyway, Zsa Zsa Gabor and Frances Hilton, who's Conrad's wife when he dies, that I'm discussing, had a really strange relationship. Zsa Zsa famously tried to go see Conrad as he was dying to say goodbye, and Frances denied her access to the room, and she called her a frump. Anyway, she ends up going to visit Frances after Conrad dies and tries to make amends with her a little bit. And she says, you and me were the same to Frances. And then she said this, and Bibi really liked this, what she said to Frances. She says that she superbly summarized a credo that has applied to all Hilton wives in regard to their husbands. So this would be Kathy too. To be loved is a strength, Zsa Zsa told Frances, but to love, that is a weakness. Here's Zsa Zsa talking about Conrad Hilton in an interview, just to give you a better idea.
Hilton like? Tall, Texan, heartless, cold. Stingy, you said. Very. The stingiest husband I've had, and the richest I've had. But rich men are always stingy, girls. Don't forget that. My mother said it's much better to have a generous husband than a rich husband. Right. Well, he was super stingy. One Christmas, he came in the bedroom with tears in his eyes and opened a beautiful jewelry box. There was a beautiful necklace. He says, Conrad, why are you crying? He said, I'm crying because I shouldn't do this. I shouldn't give it to you. And he was crying. Did you take it? Of course I took it, but I lost it. I wasn't crying. He was crying. What about Frank Sinatra? You told me about Sinatra is impossible. Sinatra is absolutely thinks that everyone in the world has to faint before him and go to bed with him. And there are some women who don't want to go to bed with him. It's not my type. A little short Italian, and I like English men very much.
So Bibi marries Eric Hilton in 1984. She's the second wife, and she stays with him for 32 years. Bibi allowed the gentleman who wrote the book to describe Eric Hilton as a man that was almost completely devoid of emotional intelligence, someone difficult to connect with, a well-meaning person who, because of the way he was raised, was not husband material. Bibi was born middle class in southern Denmark on April 30th, 1932. She was the middle child of 9 children. Her mother died when she was 11, and she was primarily raised by her father, who could be abusive sometimes. Her father used Bibi as a maid and like a child care provider for many, many years, so she was really dying to get out of the house. Bibi went to work cleaning and turning down the beds in famous hotels in Denmark. So this is obviously pretty ironic that she's a maid in a hotel and she ends up owning most of the hotels soon. I mean, at least in theory. She meets a guy from New York while she's working in Denmark. He's stationed there because of the war, and his name is Dominic Bello, and he, wants to hook up with her. Dominic gives her her first cigarette, and they have a big wedding that her father attends in Denmark. Dominic goes back to his base in Germany, and Bibi returns with her family and father to wait for him, to try to get together with him as soon as it would be allowed. Dominic, instead of getting released and returning to her, however, finds out about a family emergency, and he returns to America from Germany. And she's stuck in Denmark. And then she starts to regret being married to him because she doesn't really have any connection to him, and she was more swept up into the whole romantic aspect of it and probably getting out of her dad's house. And so then she starts to meet this really interesting man who's 20 years old named Paul Martin. He was a lieutenant in the army in Frankfurt, and he was very well dressed and good looking, and he was always in like fancy attire, and she really liked that formal demeanor of him. She was madly in love with this man, but there was a small problem. She was still married to the other man. Paul Martin tried to do the honorable thing, and he wrote Dominic in New York and was like, look, you don't really have a relationship with Bibi even though you're married. Would you annul it? And, tried to offer him things to annul the marriage so he could marry Bibi. But the other gentleman doesn't want to give up his hot wife. So he's like, no, I'm not going to do it. But anyway, Bibi ends up getting left in Denmark, and both men go back to the U.S. And now she's alone in Denmark. And it's really funny because she tells a story where both men send her a plane ticket to come to America. And she's like, oh my gosh, which plane ticket do I take? So she ends up taking one to New York, and she starts to model, and she stays at a Sheraton hotel, not a Hilton when she's in New York. And she finds it thrilling there, and she loves to model and feel fancy and all of those things. She's kind of described as this larger than life character. And she's truly in love with Paul Martin. But anyway, Dominic isn't letting her go. So what ends up happening is she's forced by Dominic to go to his family's home with him and be his bride. And she's like, no, I don't want to be married to you. And she screams and shouts. And the family calms her down and says, look, just give it 3 months and see if maybe living together as man and wife, which you haven't really done yet, will bring you guys back together again. You'll feel the love you originally felt and be happy to be his wife. But it was kind of too late for Bibi because while she had been with her other lover, Paul Martin, he had taken her to Africa and they had gone on safari. And also she traveled around the world with him a little bit. And so she had already really fallen hard for him because they had done all these activities together. It sounds like Meghan Markle and and Prince Harry. Wow, it's another safari love affair. Anyway, so she was really smitten by Paul and was very difficult for Dominic. Anyway, she ends up just leaving Dominic, and she takes her other plane ticket that she was given by Paul Martin and flies to Memphis to see him. And when she gets there, he proposes to her with a diamond ring that he had bought for her. And there was like a problem, though. Of course, she couldn't get legally married to him, but she said, yes, I will marry you symbolically. She then went back to New York in person to meet with Dominic and beg him again to let her out of their marriage. Anyway, she manages to convince him to annul the marriage, and he goes to his cousin's attorney's office to do it. And then the cousin's like, no, you shouldn't do this. You should stay with her. And she's like, just annul it. They finally get Dominic to agree and the cousin, but it's hell. It's literally hell getting rid of this guy. So she takes a train to Mississippi, and she's completely clueless about segregation, which is a big thing there. And she's sitting on a train with 2 black women, and the people are in shock because she's white and she shouldn't be sitting with them per the Mississippi segregation laws, but she didn't care, and that was sort of the way Bibi was. She ends up living in a really small town in Hattiesburg, South Mississippi, and she also gets a condo in New Orleans, which helps a little bit because it's a little fun. She has 2 children with Paul Martin, Kirk and Gary. And she went to church, and she was a doting mother, and she took great care of her kids. But then she started to panic because she felt like her life was kind of not what she wanted. It was like she was in this small town just being a mom, and her husband was an excellent provider, but he wasn't home very often. So they started to lose their connection. She met this businessman named SM, and she ended up having an affair with him, and she would see him when her husband was busy. And she does this for quite some time. And then Paul Martin figures it out, and he has an affair too. And so their relationship is kind of falling apart. And the kids are still young when this is happening. They're in like maybe their early teens. By the way, Paul Martin ends up, very cliche, marrying his office manager and secretary after Bibi, which I think the wink wink is that he was having an affair with her. But Bibi says, yeah, as a Hilton woman, you know that when your husband goes out and buys new underwear, that's when a wife knows he's having an affair. And that's what happened with her dear Paul Martin. She was pretty scandalous. She would say that she had trips to Denmark with girlfriends and stuff like that, but she'd really be away with this SM guy and traveling all over the place, having fun with him. She kind of felt a little guilty about that. So she moves to New Orleans with some friends after Paul Martin, and while she's there, she meets two wealthy men. And they pursue her. Well, unfortunately for Bibi, she chooses one of the men, and his name is Jack James, and he's a wealthy businessman in warehousing, and he owns companies in Miami, New Orleans, San Antonio, and Houston. And he takes her on a trip, and they finally have sex together in Texas, and she's so good in the sack that he's like crying the next day, and he's like, I have to marry you. But what he didn't do is tell her the truth, which was he was already married and she was the mistress without realizing it. He had been married for 40 years, and so he actually leaves his wife for Bibi, and that put a lot of pressure on her because she was like, oh my God, I just home wrecked this 40-year marriage. And she wasn't that sure about the relationship, but she went with the flow anyway. Meanwhile, Bibi and her relationship with her sons are super strong, and this man steps in and, acts like an additional parent for the boys, along with their traditional dad who also parented them. So Paul Martin was still in the picture, as a father figure for the boys. At this time, she's super close to her sons, and the sons say it's because they think that she raised them to believe that they were the only real men in her life. Like all the other men would come and go, but they wouldn't. And so they always felt this incredible closeness to their mom. Like the men may change, but our relationship with the mom won't. So this was technically her third marriage, but one was annulled. So second, you could say second. Jack was very distrustful of Bibi. He always thought she was cheating on him. He had her phones bugged. He had her followed, and she just couldn't take it anymore. She felt really trapped in that relationship, and so she filed for divorce, and she absolutely got nothing. He hid all of his assets, and he was vindictive towards her when she left, unlike Paul Martin. Dominic, she got nothing from either. Bibi said, in her life, she never was poor and she never felt rich either. So then we fast forward to 1983, and Bibi is now 51 years old. And she's like, what the hell am I doing with my life? Because by this point, get this, she's now had 2 annulments and 2 divorces. So 4 marriages, sort of, okay? Starting back when she was like 19, 20 years old. And she was just kind of like, what am I doing? I've got to figure out what I'm doing. She was very proud of the way she raised her sons, though. Bibi started to realize that she became bored in all of her lives, in her chapters, because of the status quo. She would get through all this drama. She would get everything stabilized, and then she'd become bored and she'd disrupt her circumstances. So she kind of realized that she had an adventurous spirit, and she sort of needed to kind of go in that direction somehow. She knew one thing, though. She didn't want to be alone. She just didn't want to be alone. So in November of 1983, Bibi decides to hold an audition for new suitors. And so the way she does this cleverly is by having a social gathering at her home that she secretly called a prospect dinner. She invited a bunch of men that had expressed interest in her for a mixer party. And then out of the blue, she gets a phone call in her house, and she doesn't know who this person is. And it's a guy who lives across the way in 5050 Woodway, and he says, I'm Eric Hilton. Would you like to go out for dinner? She writes this about Eric Hilton. While she didn't know him, Bibi had often seen Eric from her apartment building, which faced his. He was middle-aged and handsome, still in shape at 50, and robustly built like a football player. By her own admission, she wouldn't have been interested in him if he had just been any guy. I wasn't a dummy, she said with a laugh. I knew who he was. If he had been a shoe salesman or a mailman, I don't think I would have been very fascinated. Indeed, Bibi understood herself enough to know that proximity to power could really hold her interest. Gotta love Bibi. She wasn't exempt from wanting a powerful life, and Eric had his own kind of power as the youngest son of Conrad Hilton, the globally famous, incredibly rich hotelier. Plus, Bibi enjoyed interesting people, and while the shoe salesman or mailman may have been nice enough gentlemen, she'd probably not have a lot in common with either. But with Eric Hilton, Eric had asked Bibi's doorman for her telephone number. After obtaining it, he made his move, and as fate would have it, he made it during Bibi's prospect dinner. The timing couldn't have been better. So now we get to a scandalous part of the story. There is some allegations implied that Eric Hilton may not actually have come from Conrad Hilton, and it may have been a result of an affair that his wife Mary had on him, on Conrad. And it explains some of his kind of hard-ass behavior with Mary. So I'm going to tell you the story, and then we will continue Bibi Hilton next week, because this is way more juicy than you think at this point. Let's put it that way. So Bibi explains that Conrad Hilton was extremely devout as a Catholic, and he worked in Paris and hung out in the Champs-Élysées a lot during the First World War because he was stationed there with the army. He was a first lieutenant in the army. And his faith in the Catholic Church was really, really important to him. And he wanted desperately to make something of himself. He found himself very good looking, and so kind of was a ladies' man in his youth. Now, he came from a poor family in New Mexico. Anyway, he's at church one day, and he sees this woman in this really bright red hat, and he finds her so attractive because she's bubbly and she's like active and fun, and she's also super young. She's like 18 or 17 or something, and he's older. And he basically just thinks she's so hot. Mary Adelaide Barron. And she's from Owensboro, Kentucky. She's born in Kentucky on April 27, 1906. Now, don't get me wrong, although she had this bright red hat, she was impeccably dressed. Like, she wore her hair in a tight bun to her head that was very conservative, and she had very stern-looking features, which looked a lot like his mother, Mary. And so it's funny because his wife, Mary, and his mother, Mary, looked alike. And she was right out of a high school in Kentucky, so she knew nothing about life. And she was from like a farmer family. They did tobacco and corn pigs, and they didn't make a lot of money. She had just turned 18. She was half of Conrad's age at the time. He really enjoyed that he could tell her what to do. He had almost like a fatherly relationship with her, and she did have beautiful blue eyes. And although she had a strong face, she had a small nose and thin lips, and she just was, to Conrad, she lit up a room. There was something about the way she looked that he really, really enjoyed, and he loved her voice and her accent and all that. He saw her as a fun person that could bring some life and light into his life because he was such a workaholic. He was trying desperately to get his hotel deals done. He did them like one at a time in the beginning, and he was struggling, and his deal looked like it wasn't going to happen. He was really under pressure, and she was sort of a break from just the drudgery of what he was doing. Mary actually admitted to Bibi that she never showed it, but that she had debilitating depression and self-esteem issues while she was with Conrad as a young woman, that she didn't feel worthy of Conrad. She didn't know what she was doing. She wasn't proud of herself. And so it was a really dark period for Mary. And Conrad would stay away for work huge amounts of period of time. And Mary started to be like, as she got older, what am I doing? Like, I'm all alone all the time. I don't understand what my purpose is. Anyway, Conrad does end up marrying Mary, but it's almost doesn't happen because he's so preoccupied with business. Conrad is 38 years old and Mary is 19 when they finally get married, and they do it in Dallas at the Holy Trinity Church. And they move into a really nice residence in Dallas in Stone Lay Court Apartments complex. Everything seems like okay. They do seem like they're getting along really well and they're going to make it. Mary admitted that she was very relieved that she had a boy, Nicky Hilton Jr. She said Conrad really wanted a boy badly, and so she was happy that she could give it to him, and he loved that boy. She has a second son, and things are very good with Conrad, but then he loses interest and he becomes obsessed with work again. This is not entirely his fault because in the 1920s up to this point, he's been able to open a hotel a year. Okay, so he's got one in Dallas, Abilene, and Waco. And then all of a sudden in 1929, the stock market crashes and the Great Depression comes. And obviously he's got loans and stuff like that with banks trying to make these hotels work. And very similar to what happened in 2008 to so many real estate moguls where they lost everything, like P.K. Kemsley from Real Housewives of Beverly Hills. Conrad Hilton himself is facing losing the empire that he's just begun to build. In fact, he lost every single hotel and he was over $500,000 in debt. So, I mean, he was on the brink of absolute failure and financial demise. He felt like he wasn't alone though, because there were so many people that were really smart and successful struggling at that time. And he said, look, if I can survive this, I can survive anything. But he really became close to being, what a lot of real estate developers become, which is failures. It's very rare that one makes it through this type of a period in history. So this was a real accomplishment. And he had to be a real hustler to maintain his position. Turns out Conrad Hilton loved the book written by Helen Keller, the Helen Keller book. He said that he really respected Helen Keller because in the toughest times, right when she was about to give up hope, she would push through and she would have some major breakthrough. And he said after that book impacted him so much because whenever he felt like he was losing faith in himself or his business or what was going to happen next, he remembered the book and it would give him a sense of optimism, like he could push through it. And he often told Barron, no bad situation is permanent. Conrad also didn't listen to people that said you couldn't do things. He would just keep doing what he planned. And he didn't believe in negative thoughts. He actually believed that negative thoughts would come to fruition. God, he sounds like he believed in The Secret back in the 1920s. How did he know? And then he also was very, very patient. And people used to be really shocked that he could wait out a situation for a very long time without being reactive. And that was really the reason that he probably survived this really rough financial period. Eric's daughter, Linda Hilton, was actually the one who told the story about the bellman who gave his life savings to Conrad Hilton, which was $500. And he said, I'm going to give it to you because I know you'll do great things with it. And he said, you don't have to pay me back. And Conrad was so touched because this was like this man's whole life savings that he ended up giving him shares in the Hilton company. And he ended up becoming a very, very rich man, but initially he didn't even want the money back, allegedly. This was the story that Conrad told his granddaughter, Linda. Anyway, the Depression was ending and he was jazzed to rebuild his empire. Mary was now 23. She wasn't a little girl anymore. And she started to have her own ideas and goals and dreams versus like a father figure, situation that she had before with him. He was now 42, by the way, so he's older, and the age difference between them was like really showing at this point because he's over like everything she's about to go through. Anyway, she lost weight. She started to see herself as more beautiful. She could dress up. Mary told family members that she simply felt overlooked, undervalued, and underappreciated by Conrad. And then Bibi mentions with that sadly that is a trait of all Hilton men. And Eric, Barron, and Nikki were also guilty of doing this to all the women in their lives. Wow, get this, you guys. Bibi says that the Hilton men, including Conrad and Eric, found it difficult to be intimate with women, not just sexually, though, although that was definitely a problem, Bibi says. Uh-oh. Patricia Hilton, who was Eric's first wife, used to say, I would talk to Eric for hours and try to reach him, and he would listen. But she said nothing would actually hit or sink in. It was like two totally, separate emotional connections. Basically, all the women complain about this problem with Hilton men. Elizabeth Taylor complained about it, Bibi, Pat, Marilyn, all of them. They were like, these guys don't connect on any emotional level. They're like broken. In Conrad's diary, he wrote, "Trouble at home, another quarrel, worse than before, Mary tense and tearful tonight. I was tense and cross. We've been married for 8 years. What is the matter with us?" Many years later, Eric told me that his father was just gone all the time, working, and that his mother was miserable and feeling alone, said Patricia Hilton. It was an unfortunate situation that just kept getting worse. I guess it wasn't surprising that Mary would end up cheating on him, meaning Conrad. He wasn't there for her, and from the way Eric described her to me, and even from what I later saw of her myself, she was definitely a woman who needed attention, or maybe a better way to say it was that she was a woman who felt like she deserved attention. So yes, she went out and she found it. So Mary meets her Conrad replacement at a ball at a charity event, and she meets a man, Mac Saxon, who's a Texan football coach. She's 26, and that's who she has her affair with. A family member of Mary's told this story. She knew it was wrong, and she knew it would be absolutely devastating to Conrad if he were to find out about it. However, she justified the affair by telling herself she was tired of being neglected, that she deserved more than what she was getting as Conrad's wife. So yes, she strayed. She wasn't proud of it, but she did it. One of Mac's friends, because he was around Mary and Mac cheating, said this: when Mary would come to El Paso with Mac, everybody knew something was going on between them, though we didn't know what. Mac was a good-looking guy, attractive to women, who also had a bit of a little reputation as a drinker. We all know that he caroused. Anyone who saw him with Mary knew it would amount to nothing but trouble. The Hilton family story surrounding Conrad finding out about Mary cheating is like a crazy one. Conrad had to know for sure that Mary was cheating on him. He suspected it, so he ended up following Mary. She ends up meeting up with Mac and going back to his house, and he follows them the whole time. Then, when they're in the house for about 30 minutes, he waits. Then he goes to the door and he knocks. Mac answers the door in his robe, and then Conrad pushes through the door and goes in and sees Mary, and she's getting a whiskey, and I'm sure she's probably in her underwear or something. Anyway, the way they describe it is an emotional scene followed, and Mac ordered Conrad out of his home. And then from that moment on, he no longer trusted Mary after that, and he was pretty disgusted with the whole thing. One of Conrad's friends said Connie wasn't a quitter. I guess his close friends called him Connie. He said Connie wasn't a quitter. He tried, and to an extent, so did Mary. But then, much to everyone's astonishment, Mary ended up pregnant in October of 1932. So the read between the lines here is that Conrad and her are not really together anymore. So how the hell did she get pregnant? 9 months later, little Eric Michael Hilton was born, and to many people, it was a mystery. Had Conrad and Mary been intimate during this difficult time in their marriage? To many people, that seemed impossible because they couldn't stand each other. They wouldn't even want to be in the same room together. Anyway, everyone in the social circuit just said, like, what are we going to do? Conrad and Mary are the only ones that know the truth, so we just better keep our nose out of it and just assume Eric is Conrad's. But everyone thought it might have been Mac's. People noticed in Conrad's diary that he didn't go into any stories about Eric Hilton, like he had kind of done with the other kids when they were born. He just wrote Mary expecting a baby, Eric Michael Hilton born at St. Paul's at 10 a.m. And then must get something solid to show Greenwood. I know I can straighten that hotel out if I can only get a chance. So dead inside. Towards the birth of Eric Hilton, which is another indicator to a lot of people, his diary, that Eric might not have been his son, but he wanted to do the right thing for the boy and, to save face socially. for Mary's sake and his own. There's another note that's really callous that he wrote in his diary. It said, "No time to stop off and see Mary or the baby. Called everyone I could think of as a substitute banker. My time's running out." Conrad refused to divorce Mary no matter how unhappy they were because he was very religious and it was against his religion. But Mary kept forcing the issue she wanted to be with the Mac guy. So what she ended up doing is saying, if you don't file for divorce, I will. And that would be extremely embarrassing to Conrad and would have all sorts of implications socially. So he said, fine, I'll give you the divorce. And he divorced her and actually took custody of all 3 children. He punished her. He didn't give her money. He took the children. He punished her. Conrad didn't ever blame himself, though. He blamed the depression on the downfall of his marriage, but he also realized he wasn't a great husband. Eric was only 11 months old when his parents got divorced on June 11th, 1934, and that was the end of Conrad and Mary's 9-year-long marriage. Mary was heartbroken that she lost custody of her children, and Conrad was given the right to dictate the visitations and what was considered reasonable times and places. She was only given $300 a month in her alimony, and it was capped at $3,600. Once it reached that amount, she wouldn't get another penny. Conrad honestly would boast to family members that after Mary, he knew he could destroy anyone in court proceedings, because obviously it's not typical for a mom not to get custody. But as a man in the court systems and with the power and the wealth that he had and the attorneys he had access to, he was like, I can beat anyone now by using the legal system. So he learned how to weaponize it. Mary Hilton goes and marries Max Saxon, who's the guy she's been cheating with on Conrad, on June 1st, 1935. And they're in Fort Worth, Texas. And Eric feels rejected by Conrad Hilton, who he sees as his father, because he's only 2 years old. And Conrad chooses out of all 3 kids to give him only to Mary and Mac to take care of in full custody. And a lot of people think that that's because Mac was really the father, and Conrad at a certain point just couldn't deny that to himself anymore. So he just didn't want really anything to do with the kid. And so he gave the kid to Mac and Mary to take care of because it was their child, basically, in his mind. He said that it was related to work, but a lot of people didn't see it that way. Conrad didn't question his paternity, though, and a lot of people thought that maybe that showed he wasn't ever really sure. So maybe they did hook up, or maybe he raped Mary. He was, that allegation was made by other wives of him. So perhaps under some really awful situation that occurred, and Eric was possibly the result of it. So he wasn't sure. With Jaja and Francesca Hilton, his daughter, he does question the paternity. And so that's why a lot of people believe that there was some possibility that Eric was indeed his kid, but he just was not connected to Eric. Anyway, the sad thing about Eric Hilton is he gets given to Mary and Mac, and they don't really want a parent. And so now he's been abandoned by Conrad, and he's been abandoned by his mom, Mary, and Mac, his stepdad or possible dad or whatever. So he feels really alone in the world as a baby, as a young boy. Needless to say, Eric chose Conrad to be his father, even though he was made aware of some of these allegations that were flying around as he got older. He said, no, I believe Conrad is my father. Bibi, back to Bibi. Bibi said that she thought Eric was Conrad's son because he had looks that were similar to Conrad, and she could see him clearly in his father. And she said, but she did think that maybe Conrad, when Eric was a child, questioned whether it was his son or not. But then as he got older, he questioned it less and less, and then he kind of accepted it. but there was like a rite of passage that happened between Eric and Conrad. Bibi also reminds critics of Eric that Conrad wasn't very nice to Nikki or Baron, and that her feeling was that Conrad always prioritized one thing and one thing only, and that is power. Firstly and secondarily, money. This is why Eric becomes so very different than Nikki and Baron, too, because Nikki and Baron are raised in the socialite Dallas, Houston scene. They're also in LA. They're pampered and given fancy things by their father. Eric is raised in El Paso in an isolated little small border town. He's not spoiled at all, and he's often lonely. And so he's kind of a simple-minded person versus his brothers. And he can also, he's kind of nice. And, his brothers are real sharks. Think LA, So this was a real dichotomy in the three brothers. And Eric was really different than them. Okay, so then there's a weird story about Eric, which I'm going to end on because this is getting long. Basically, what happens is Eric is mainly living with his grandmother, and he calls her Mamu, and he's kind of horny like all, 13-year-old kids or whatever. So he's in the bathtub masturbating. His grandmother comes in and catches him, and she's like, the devil's going to get you. And when people asked, were you embarrassed? He was like, no, I wasn't embarrassed. I just felt cheated because I didn't get to finish. And then just to give you some insight into his personality. And then he talked about a time where he was 14 years old and his mom didn't want to take care of him that night. So he got money to go to the Mayflower Hotel, which was, I guess, nearby. So at 14, he makes his way to the Mayflower Hotel and he's drinking alcohol in the bar of the hotel. And he sees a little girl and her mom come in to the bar, and the little girl's beautiful and the mom's beautiful, and he's taken with their beauty or whatever. And he's 14, and he orders a bottle of wine, and he sends it to their table to drink. And they get the wine, and they're drinking all together. So he's 14, he's having wine with them. Anyway, she's about to perform in a play, and he goes to the play and they let him stay in the back dressing room where she is. And the little girl has to change a bunch of times to be in the play. And he bragged to his friends that he got to see the little girl who was 11 naked a bunch of times while she was changing. And he was 14. But anyway, a lot of people thought that was kind of a weird story to tell everybody. The story's the Margaret O'Brien story. That was the little girl. Anyway, Margaret O'Brien actually said that she ended up having her first kiss with a boy with Eric Hilton. And she went on to be a movie star. Nicky Hilton ended it, though, because he said, you can't be with her. She's way too young. You'll get in trouble. And so Nicky made him stop seeing Margaret, and he did, of course. He said he did whatever his brother told him because he idolized his older brother, Nicky. Nicky was really kind to Eric. He would let him hang around, and he would share his Playboys with him and stuff. But Nicky, very, very young, drank a lot and also did drugs, which was kind of unusual during this period of time. So he went on to marry Elizabeth Taylor. But isn't it funny how, we don't see the Hiltons in the way that they are at all? Do you see these stories? That's why I wanted to do this with you guys today, because you're learning with the Paris Hilton storage unit. You're going to be like, what the hell is this? This is not at all the kind of person that I am getting the Paris Hilton brand. As we dig deeper and deeper in the Hilton hoity-toity Hilton group, the one that was it's the respectable ones, you're going to find they're a mess. I'm laughing at this point that they were saying, oh, Rick Hilton married the dancing girl, Kathy Hilton. I mean, they're not all that. Look at the mess Conrad is so far. And he's the patriarch of the family. He's supposed to be the snobbiest of the whole group. And Paris said she thinks she's like him in her memoir. Huh? Anyway, you're going to love the next part of Bibi's book. It gets better and better. You're going to really have a feel for I mean, unfortunately, the Hiltons are going to fall from grace dramatically in this process. But I think Bibi's point is, so far in her book, is that these are real people and they put on their pants one leg at a time, like all people. And you can glorify them all you want, but when you've been a wife or a family member, you know, it's great having the name and the power and the perception behind it. But it really is like the Wizard of Oz, and they're kind of like the wizard, and we're just like all the munchkins looking at them. And there's a curtain, and there's a guy, and he's got lights and smoke, and you just believe that there's some major, you know, amazing person with superpowers and all this awesome stuff that you're buying into. But in truth, it's just a salesperson who fell out of the sky, who was basic, who just found a way to con people, was a shyster, and figured out how to con the world, how to con the world of Oz. So on that note, I'll leave you with that deep thought. I'm off to follow the yellow brick road.
Follow the yellow brick road. Follow the yellow brick road.
Follow the yellow brick road. Follow the yellow brick road. Follow the yellow brick road. Follow the yellow brick road. Follow the yellow brick road. Follow, 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 follow the yellow brick road. You have to see the wizards, the wonderful Wizard of Oz. You find the ends of the wiz, if ever a wiz there was. If ever a wiz there was, the Wizard of Oz is one because